Being Creative with Tad Williams. Part 1.
Things that you can use.
My name's Tad Williams, that's my first name, and I'm a writer. I write books, but I write all kinds of things, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And my wife, Deborah Beale, is also here, and Deborah is now also writing books. And what we've just done together is we've written a book called The Dragons of Ordinary Farm, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. But before I do any talking about our actual book, I wanted to talk to you guys, because you look like a very creative bunch. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about being creative and about how I do it, and then maybe later on we can ask some questions and hear from some of you guys a little bit about how you do it as well, because I'm sure you're very creative. And I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions, a couple of hints about some things that you can use when you're doing things either for fun or for school or anything like that, in terms of being creative. But I know that after a long day at school, which a lot of you have had today, or a long day doing grown-up things, which many of you grown-ups have done, you may not be in the mood to remember a whole lot of complicated things. So I have boiled down everything I'm going to talk about today into two things. This is all you have to remember. This is it. Simple, right? AA, ZZ. There is no alphabet in between here to be memorized. Just these two things, AA and ZZ. And I'm going to come back to them in just a second, okay? And I'm going to explain what those mean. Now, anybody here want to give me an idea of what being creative means? And you have to speak loudly. Yes, go ahead.
It is like thinking of your own things, like a make-believe story, and make really good pictures and really fun things.
Those are all excellent creative things. And in fact, those are all things that everybody can do. Every single person in this room here does creative things. And the difference between doing creative things for fun, to entertain yourself, and to do creative things as your job is usually just deciding that that's the job you want to have someday. So those of you who are a little bit younger, you can start now and start planning on having a career someday doing the creative stuff that you like to do for a living. But what I decided to do eventually was to become a writer. It didn't happen right away. Like a lot of you guys, I had a lot of different interests. I liked to draw pictures and paint paintings. I liked music. I liked to play it and listen to it and sing it. I liked theater, which I know some of you like. I was an actor. Yeah, I see the hands go up. Because that's another kind of being creative, isn't it? It's another way of telling stories, but using your own self as the thing to tell the story, by being a character and by speaking lines. And all of these things had really one thing in common. And those things is that they're a way of taking what's inside of you, your thoughts, your ideas, and bringing that out to show it to other people. So you have to find ways to make the ideas come to you. Okay? And one of my two ways for making ideas come to you and then for making those ideas grow, which is what we're going to talk about today, are these pairs of letters, AA and ZZ. And AA stands for always ask. Okay? This is really important. And write it down so you can see it. Okay? Always ask. What does that mean? What that means is that people are always going to be telling you things. You're going to be hearing things. You're going to be seeing things as you get older, but every day of your life that people tell you, this is how the world is. This is how things are meant to be. Now the interesting thing is that a lot of the things that people tell you turn out to be maybe not always true. Some of us here are old enough to remember that 50 years ago, people were being told things like, women can't really be doctors. An African American could never be a president of the United States. Okay? Those ideas at the time were ideas that people thought were right. Okay? But why did that change? Because people asked, why is that true? Why is that even being said? I don't think it is true. I'm going to change it. And that's how things start to change. And that's what a creative person also has to do. You always ask. Whenever you see anything, you ask, why is that way? Why should I do it that way? Okay? We'll come back to that. The other one, and this is from a Dr. Seuss book. Who here has read Dr. Seuss? I figured you might have heard of him.
He's rhyming, he rhymes some stuff.
He's a great writer. And what I like most about Dr. Seuss is his imagination. And one of the things Dr. Seuss said in his book called On Beyond Zebra, which is about books and the alphabet, and he said, in the places I go, there are things that I see that I never could spell if I stopped with the Z. I'm telling you this because you're one of my friends. My alphabet starts where your alphabet ends. My alphabet starts where your alphabet ends. He wrote that in a book about making up imaginary letters that come after the letter Z. And then he said the other thing, and this is the ZZ. And we're going to talk about these some more, so don't worry. And the ZZ is, let zebra, which is the last letter of the alphabet, Z, be your 0, which also starts with a Z, as you good spellers out there, I'm sure know. So, instead of saying zebra is the end of the alphabet, Z, Dr. Seuss said, what could come after that? And he came up with a whole book, okay, about what comes after zebra. So, what writers do, and a lot of creative people, artists, musicians, is we like to think about, what if you don't stop at zebra? Okay? What if you don't stop with the things that everybody believes are true? Okay? Now, we wanted to write a book, and we wanted to write a book for young readers, like many of you are. One of the things that came to me, actually, was one of these kinds of ideas. Okay? And I was in a train going somewhere, and I was looking out the window, and there were all these cows, and these beautiful farms and meadows, with the cows grazing in them, and I said, you know, cows are okay, but I've seen a lot of cows. I've seen a lot of cows. What would be much more interesting is if there was some other kind of animal outside of this train for me to look at. Like, oh, I don't know, dinosaurs, unicorns, giant fish-eating monkeys. Who knows, you know? But something other than cows, because anybody can look out a train window and see cows. So, when I came back, I kept thinking about that idea, and I said, well, what if you had animals that nobody had ever had before on a farm? And I suddenly had this idea, wow, what if all of the unusual and interesting animals that we know from fairy tales, like dragons, like unicorns, like all kinds of things like that, could be on a farm? It would be a farm, but it wouldn't be a farm full of boring old cows and perfectly nice but not very interesting pigs. It would be a farm full of mythical animals, imaginary animals. And that was the first thing that made me start to think about the book that Deborah and I eventually wrote called The Dragons of Ordinary Farm. So this is where ideas start. They start by asking questions. They start by saying either why or why not.
Let zebra be your 0.
Always ask.